And we're live. I think we're live. All right, we're live. Switching to. We're going to be talking about layout-based components within HSDS React. Excuse me. Um, we have two very handy little layout components within HSDS React. One of them is called Flexy. The other one is called Grid. Now, their names, I mean, if you haven't used them before, their names might be a little bit deceiving. So Grid, this is what you're seeing right here. It's not using CSS Grid to build this. In fact, it's using the grid system that you would find in Bootstrap. It's basically Bootstrap's grid system converted to React with a little bit of tweakage to enhance it for HSDS. Um, if you're familiar with Bootstrap's grid system, it works exactly the same. There is a container, there's a row, and there are the columns that live inside. Um, and for the so the reason why you need these combinations of things is how it works is you'd have your container, which are rectangles. So you have your container, which looks like this. And in order for you to have your little column, I'm going to change these fill colors. Red, yeah. In order to have your columns live inside with the appropriate kind of spacing on either side of them, they would have like that. They would have margins on their left and the right so that they have equal spacing between all the items within the row. Okay, so here I gotta draw the row. So what the row's job is like that. So the row lives to surround the columns to provide some sort of negative margining on both the left and the right side in order for the left and the right margins for the columns within to not affect the overall layout. It's just basically there to offset space. And with that combination of container, row, column, you're able to construct a grid-like layout. And Bootstrap, they use a base of 12, so you have the sizes of 1 to 12, and they have various sizes for responsive stuff. So they have, by default, this is mobile first. Do they have extra small? All right. So by default, it's mobile first, meaning all the columns are full width until you specify a certain size at a certain breakpoint. So here we have, say, MD. The MD size will kick in after your viewport size, your browser, is around 768. That's when the medium sizes kick in. So you can see it here, hopefully. What are these guys? They don't say it in their examples. This looks like it's always. Here we go. So we have here a column of 6. So by default, it'll have. So how this works is because it's using a base of 12, you have to do a little bit of math. So you'd have to do 6 divided by 12, which is 50%. So by default, this is 50% wide. However, when you have a medium viewport size being 768 pixels, it'll kick in with the size of 4. 4 divided by 12 is 33 point bunch of threes, and then you get a third, and that's how that works. But if I shrink it down to a certain point, you can see that it kicks in to do the half size because 6 divided by 12 is 50%, and now we have 50% wide columns. And that's how Bootstrap's grid system works. It's fantastic. It's been around for years, and this is basically the one built inside of HSDS. No gutters. What the heck? They've enhanced this a lot since that's fun. I did stuff like this as well. So they've enhanced this a lot since I last took a look at it. I mean, ah, been using Bootstrap for a while. The last time I was super familiar with it was around Bootstrap 3 and the beta, around the beta period of 4. Now they're on 4 stable and it's fine. Okay, so HSDS, exactly the same thing. However, because it's React, we have Reacty looking little components like so. And how you'd construct a grid within HSDS React, oh, it's still early, is you'd have a parent. I guess you can do this. So the grid component has several little subcomponents. One is grid container, one is grid row, like so. And then you have little grid columns inside where you can put stuff in. So here I have my grid column. I'm going to put my stuff component inside. So by default, this would basically be, I'm going to make this bigger. Hide this guy. Yeah. So by default, this would have a fully spanned column within your row, within your container. This is your grid. And in order for you to specify how big you want the columns to be, you use the size property like so. And now you just give it some sort of size. So if you want it to be 8, you do that. And there is a slight difference in how we think about, or rather how you would write your breakpoint-based sizes within HSDS React. You would use this handy @ symbol, like this. So if you take a look at other various Bootstrap React libraries, they do them in different ways. So this one, for example, React Bootstrap, they have this kind of system where you define widths based on class names using properties. So here we have the extra small at 12, medium at 8, and so on. So you'd have very specific properties for those specific breakpoints. I intentionally did not go this route just because for our use cases we typically don't need something so fine-grained. So I feel like the more common use case is to specify a single size like this, and any kind of variations you can kind of tack on top within size versus having 3 or 4 different properties for you to specify sizes. So like instead of doing something, I don't know, like this, MD, H, and so on, both of them they work just as, I mean they work just as well. I just prefer this one, I think. But I mean, in the future, if this specific implementation gets too confusing, we can always change it to something else. But for now, this is what we have. So we have the size. And in order for you to change it based on viewport position, we are using this @ convention. So this @ convention is based on something that I believe was introduced with CSS. Media query @ I don't know if I can. If I can't find this in here, I give up. Okay, I give up. Yeah, so this was around the period where that was introduced, and the suggestion of how to write functional CSS that targeted specific breakpoints was to use an @ symbol, which makes sense to me. It keeps it clear, or sorry, it keeps it concise. It's very clear. So we have a size of 8, and we want to have a size of 6 at the large breakpoint size, and so on. So here we have normally a size of 12, but when we're at the medium breakpoint size, we'll have a width of 6. And with all these guys constructed, like so, this is what we got. We have a grid of various sizes, and once I attempt to resize this thing give me a second. I'm trying to resize my browser. There we go. And they snap. Great, perfect. So the other thing you might notice within this particular markup is I'm missing row and container. And that is because within HSDS React, if you just use grid by itself, you don't have to use row and container. It just saves a little bit of writing of markup, scaffolding of things. When you use grid, the container and the row have automatically been added for you. So you can just write, hey, I want a grid of columns, and now these are your grid of columns, and you would specify your sizes and you put your stuff inside. And that is how the grid system works within HSDS React. It's fairly straightforward. If you're used to something like Bootstrap, this should be very, very familiar to you. And so let's jump to Flexy. Flexy is an interesting one. Similar to Grid, it does use CSS Flexbox to render the layout portions, but it's not like CSS Flexbox directly. You're not going to be interfacing with the CSS Flexbox API or properties and values when you're using Flexy. Um, so the whole goal of Flexy, the whole purpose, the whole reason why it exists is it's so that you can very easily align. So let's pretend I have a layout thingy here, right? And I want to, and by default, I have some guy here and it has some other guy here. The whole purpose of Flexy is to be able to reliably and very simply align items like this within some sort of container. So when we're building UI, modern UI, typically you would have actions or titles or something that float arbitrarily on the left side and arbitrarily on the right side. You see this all over the place. So, I mean, just this interface, you see it right here. Here you see it where things float on the left. We have some things that float on the left, the middle, and the right. It's all over the place. So Flexi was something that it was a CSS pattern that I created. When did I create it? Like 4 years ago. And it was originally brought over from my previous workplace here with the Seed framework, and then now bring it into HSDS React, and it's used all over the place within HSDS. Ouch! I hit my elbow. Within HSDS React, actually. So you can use it to construct UI and components, or you can use it to construct full layouts, whatever it is you need. And the cool thing about Flexy is that by default, it aligns things to the middle for you without you having to do anything. This is a default behavior of Flexy. And if I have two items like this, and then I choose to add another one, it will align things like this, like so. I'm going to change the colors. So this one is red, it's fine. This one is blue. No, blue. Yeah, this one is green, sure. So even though these ones have varying heights, they will automatically align themselves to the middle of this flexy thing. And reality, it should be more like this. Cool. And the other neat thing about Flexy is the idea of blocks. So a block is basically designed to take up the remaining space of whatever is left from here. So say I have a tall, skinny guy here and a big, chunky guy here, and I want this guy to take up the remaining space. In the world of Flexy, these ones are known as items, and this guy is known as a block. So if I put this guy here, it'll actually grow to be like this. And again, the height of it, you can have any height in here. It'll by default align things to the middle. And the reason why I keep saying by default is because you are able to adjust how you want Flexy to align your items within. So I can say, hey, align everything to the top, and then Flexy will now do this. Or middle, which is the default, or bottom, and it'll align everything to the bottom. Gap is kind of fun. So gap exists so that there is always a space between all your items within. By default, I think the size is small, I think, which is, I don't know, I can't tell, some number like 12 or 10 or 8 or something like that. And it gets increasingly larger as you go up the scale and smaller as you go down. And there is a gap of none in case you want your items within to be friendly and touching each other like so. Just is short for I don't know about this name. This was something I came up with a while ago when I was pairing with a previous coworker of mine, and it kind of stuck ever since. Just is basically a way for you to justify your content, which is where the name came from, to a certain area. By default, I believe it's center, but if you do just left, then your items would snap like that. But hang on, by default, it'll align to the middle. So if you do flexi just left, this is what happens. And just right, it'll be something like that, and so on. So a very, very, very common usage of flexi would be, imagine if you had, say, a thumbnail or something, and now I had some text. And this text can grow or shrink, doesn't really matter. This way or this way, depending on the size of your card, but the thumbnail basically always stays the same. So this is a perfect use of flexi. So here I have a flexi that surrounds them, and I have a item that wraps this thumbnail, and I have a block that surrounds this text. And regardless, I'm gonna see if I can resize this together. So regardless, oh yeah, so regardless of how tall or skinny the text becomes, flexi will grow with all the content that you have inside. So let's see, I think this is the best example. Where flexi got its inspiration from is actually from Mac OS. So if you take a look at Finder, and then what did I click? What on earth did I click? Customize toolbar. So when you pull up something like Customize toolbar within your Finder or Firefox or something, you'll see some interface that looks like this, where you have your chunks of items, and then you have your blocks. Your blocks are the things that take up the remaining space. I guess they call it flexible space. Remaining space to allow your items to flow within this particular strip of UI, layout, interface, sure. And that's basically what flexi is. Flexi is a strip that has several items, columns, you can think of them as columns within, for a single row. And then you would have blocks that take up arbitrarily large or small space, depending on whatever it is you have left, and items that specify and contain little guys inside. So you can have things that float on the left and the right, or you can have things that float in the middle. And you can have, and they can be any size you want, and Flexi will know how to respond accordingly. And you can also specify if you want everything jammed to the left or the right or the middle, which is by default, or how you want things aligned vertically, top, middle, or bottom. And that's what Flexi is. And the whole goal of something like Flexi or something like Grid is to allow you to construct UI without having to write CSS or markup in doing so. These should cover the majority of the patterns that you need, along with things built into the components themselves. But yeah, let's see, what's a good example of Flexi? Oh yeah, toolbar. There you go. Toolbar. Do I have a toolbar with things? No. Great. I need. Oh, come on. There was some sort of toolbar. I had to reorganize this thing, by the way. Yeah, but toolbar is basically you don't really see a very good example here. This is awful. Oh, here we go. Here we go. What is this? Yeah. So in this toolbar, we have tags that are arbitrary width that float all on that side, and then we have some avatars that float on this side. This is basically Flexi. We have a Flexi block on the left and the Flexi item on the right. So as soon as you kind of get used to Flexi, it's very simple to spot these patterns, and it's very simple to implement. So hopefully you found this helpful. The use of Flexi and Grid within HSDS React, how you can construct layouts for your UIs without really having to write CSS, because all that hard stuff has been taken care of for you. Yeah, I think that's all I got for today. Thank you so much for tuning in. Hope you have a fantastic day. Take it easy. Bye.